Good Wednesday evening, 13 News Now meteorologist Evan Stewart here with an update on what's going on with Hurricane Ian. It made landfall a little bit earlier this afternoon in Florida, and we are certainly going to feel some of the effects here in Hampton Roads as well. So this is your Ian update, Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. First, we'll take a look at the satellite view of the storm, and you can see that the system came ashore right in here about 3:05 this afternoon around Punta Gorda, Florida, and the system, you can see once it came ashore, the eye wall is really starting to collapse because hurricanes use that very warm water as fuel, and once you get on shore, it starts to interact with the land. You get the friction from the trees, the buildings, you lose that source of energy, and the eye wall really starts to collapse, and that's what we've seen with the system now that it has come on shore, and it is going to quickly weaken. But it is still basically going to be a hurricane or a tropical storm that crosses the entire peninsula of Florida before emerging back out into the Atlantic somewhere near Daytona Beach. So a lot of Florida is going to be dealing with this storm. We've already seen significant flooding around the Fort Myers area down towards Naples. Here's the visible satellite view, and again, a lot of thunderstorm activity on the north side of the system. Here, as we get closer to sunset, you can really see those towering cumulus clouds there on the north side of the system. One thing to note, Tampa Bay missed the worst part of this storm, and as a matter of fact, with those winds coming in out of the northwest, it actually blew the water out of Tampa Bay. Good news for Tampa as far as flooding, but bad news here for Sanibel Island, areas around Fort Myers, Naples, that return flow on the backside, those winds coming in initially out of the west and now the southwest has just continued to pile up water. In some places, over 10 feet of storm surge around Fort Myers and Naples. Here's a look at the radar as of 5:44, and again, we talked about those big thunderstorms on the north side of the system. You can just see all the yellows, the oranges, and the reds here between Fort Myers and Tampa, Florida. Even heavy rain over towards Orlando and Daytona Beach, setting everything in motion. You can see as the storm came ashore, worked its way into Florida. We are starting to see some of that collapse of the eye wall. Not a lot of rain on the east side of it right now from Fort Pierce down to Miami. Fort Lauderdale, not seeing much rain. Every once in a while they'll get a band that moves through. But the heaviest of the rain, where we had the flood warnings here north of Fort Myers, and those are the areas that were really concerned with freshwater flooding from the rain. As we talked about, the tidal flooding from the storm surge areas around Fort Myers. Again, here's another look at it. A lot of the area surrounding Tampa, around the bay, is some marshlands, and you can see not forecasting any storm surge. As a matter of fact, the water levels were even lower. But as we head southward, here's where you can see the big impacts around Port Charlotte, towards Boca Grande, Captiva. Here's Sanibel Island. Much of the island, wetlands, those areas not in wetlands have been covered with nearly 9 feet or more of water. You can see again the heavy issues with flooding around the Fort Myers area as that wind just pushed the water up the rivers, up the bays. Same thing over here towards Port Charlotte. Naples dealing with that as well because of that onshore flow bringing in all that water out of the Gulf of Mexico. Now let's talk about the track of the system. This is the 5 o'clock advisory from the Hurricane Center. Wind still of 140. It will continue to quickly weaken, and by tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock, it'll still be a tropical storm here close to Daytona Beach, Florida. There's Cape Canaveral right there. So the storm will exit off of Florida tomorrow afternoon, early tomorrow evening as a tropical storm, and then likely make another landfall here once again somewhere just south of Charleston, South Carolina, working its way onshore as a tropical storm. And then here's where the big issue comes in. As we get into the weekend, this storm is going to stall across the mountains of Virginia and West Virginia. As it does so, it is going to produce several days of rain. We're also going to see a stationary front that sort of stalls across the area. That's really going to be the focus for the rain over the next several days. We're looking at rain here in Hampton Roads from Friday into Saturday, Sunday, and likely into Monday as well. So several days of rain here in Hampton Roads as this low pressure stalls. Issues with flooding in the mountains of Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, Eastern Kentucky, and Tennessee, absolutely. They're going to have some issues with some flooding, and we could have some potential issues with flooding here from heavy rain and also from the tides. With that low stalled across our coastline, we're going to see several days of onshore winds. Rainfall amounts 15 to 20 inches here across parts of Florida. Here in Hampton Roads, generally 4 to 6 inches of rain. There will likely be some areas that pick up a little bit more, maybe 7 or 8 inches of rain. That's certainly a possibility. As we mentioned, back across the mountains of North Carolina, Virginia, several inches of rain as well. Of course, that rain falling on the mountains, running into the valleys and all those streams and rivers creates issues with flooding. Here, mainly looking at several days of rain, some good steady rain. If we get a heavier downpour, there could be a few neighborhoods that have issues with some flooding from the heavy rains. That'll be in areas that there's poor drainage. Maybe some of the storm drains are clogged with debris. I know crews have been out trying to clear those out because we are talking about several days of rain. The other issue, we're going to see several days of onshore winds, and that'll continue to pile up the water. This is the tide forecast for Sewell's Point. Starting on Friday, the Friday afternoon high tide will likely be around 4.9 to 5 feet. That's right in the middle of minor tidal flooding. That starts at 4.5 feet. Every day those tide levels will get just a little bit higher. So as we move into Saturday afternoon, 1:46 p.m., we're looking at a minor tidal flooding of 5.4 feet. Moderate starts at 5.5, so we'll be close to some moderate tidal flooding. Now, earlier this year, we got over 6.5 feet. That was back on January 3rd, I believe. So we have had major tidal flooding already this year. The potential is there, certainly into Sunday. Forecast models don't go out quite that far for tide forecast just yet. But we could see some moderate tidal flooding as we head into the day on Sunday, maybe up around 5.8, 5.9, or 6 feet. So that's something we will certainly watch here as we go through the next several days. So our forecast tomorrow, looking at increasing clouds, a shower possible in North Carolina, high temperature of 70 degrees. 72 on Friday with rain overspreading the area. It'll be windy. Windy with rain on Saturday, issues with tidal flooding, 76 degrees, occasional rain on Sunday. Not a total washout on Sunday, but pretty close to it. It's about as close as you can get to a total washout without it actually being one. And still looking at some rain on Monday, 74 degrees. And then as we get into the day on Tuesday, some isolated showers before things finally clear out by the middle of next week. So again, we are looking at a wet weekend ahead, windy conditions, issues with tidal flooding, maybe some flooding from some rain if we get some of those heavier downpours. Of course, keep it tuned right here. The 13 News Now will keep you updated on air, online, with our apps, and on social media. So stay ahead of the storm and we'll keep you up to date.